if we look at a candle and gaze upon the fact that it's meant to receive light, the wick kind of stands out in a way of expressing the fact that it kind of is waiting to receive a fire. This was all of us before our baptism, waiting to receive the light of Christ. Our parents knew better than we did. For most of us were brought to the font to receive the light of Christ before we could understand the grandeur of this saving event. That's why it's sometimes important to go back and read what happened at baptism. That day we received a fire, and it was meant to be kept burning through family practice. For this divine fire is rather interesting because it's Christ alone. That is why the Mass is the center of our lives as Christians and listening to His Word, because our wicks can only be kept burning by Christ. Otherwise, it will usually get blown out by the wind of worldly ways, and if we don't center our life on Christ, we eventually won't shine either. But our wick will have no light, or in other words, a person with no holy and good convictions that can give direction toward souls, to point them to Christ. For Christ gives us the ability to know everything we need to know about life. He helps us understand what we must do, where we are going. At the same time, He is truly present in the Holy Eucharist. But the interesting thing about this reality about God being a divine fire is that this light in us burns at our sins to purify us so we may actually shine. We can see our sins as something that is meant to melt away like the wax of a candle. This is why this gospel mentions nothing will be hidden. It's always kind of a frightening passage. I think we all have sins we might like to hide. But this is why the church has the confessional. We all fall short of the glory of God, and also the church teaches us a life of penance to kind of rid ourselves of sin. For we should never be ashamed of confession, but we should be ashamed of our sins. To confess our sins is kind of brave, and it also humbles us. And I believe ridding ourselves of sin most profoundly happens by focusing on good things that we can do rather than simply dwelling on each and every failure of ourselves, but more or less conquering evil by doing good, as St. Paul instructs us. Our mind and heart should be truly focused on what good I can do, or what good I can do in reparation of sins. This gives us a better vision of going about our life more or less, rather than looking at the negative or dwelling on our sinfulness. We should focus on the good and confess the bad. Then we will immerse ourselves in doing good with Christ and for Christ. And humble people will recognize the light in you and in I. To strive to do good and be merciful is a good rule for the whole of life. But if we don't worship Christ, we will do neither.